Today's edition of the Spotrac podcast is presented by Bettor Edge. Visit bettoredge.com. Download the app in the iOS App Store today. Use code SPOTTRACK at registration. Get yourself $20 off. It is the social betting marketplace you've been looking for. Reduce that VIG. Take control of the odds. Create competitions. Go head to head. How about flash markets? The prediction markets are steaming hot right now across the internet. Bettor Edge has it all again. It's bettoredge.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Tuesday, October 28th. Recuperating from not staying up, but certainly diving back into the World Series last night. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the MLB stuff as it flips to 2026 in that regard in just a few moments. Keith Smith on the back end for our big feature today, talking 5 candidates to be watching for as NBA next contract candidates. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Spurs and a little bit of Victor Wembanyama because he's off to a lightning fast start. So are his Spurs. Is this a team we should be believing in? And if that's the case, are they built for greatness today? Can they be built by March? Or is it going to be a slower drip? That's what Keith has been tasked with for the back end of this show. We'll get there soon. Let's start with college coaching contracts. Kind of top of mind. It's been 3 straight weeks of having to think about, read through, discuss, understand the college landscape because it's changing so freaking rapidly and the money has been absurd. And quite frankly, the question I get asked the most is this sustainable? Is this real? What are the actual nuts and bolts of this college coaching situation? Because it feels like boosters, universities, well, whoever's being brought into this conversation, and it sounds like everybody at this point with these major schools in terms of financial backing, because we now have another $50 million, and I'm air quoting, buyout from Brian Kelly and LSU, something that was simmering and then came to a full boil this week with a loss and a blow up between the athletic director, the coach, the president, everybody involved sort of got to a point where this doesn't seem sustainable going forward. But let's talk about the contracts themselves. I've read now a few dozen over the past few weeks specifically. Some that have come to fruition, some that may still by the end of year, some that are pretty rock solid from a coaching standpoint. And it seems like they are locked in now. But with Brian Kelly specifically, this is the first time where I've seen clear legalese stating this duty to mitigate. Having gone back now through many of these other contracts, it's there. It's just in finer print and not clearly as explained. And oh, by the way, because I think it was such a well put, well written, standout spotlight section in his contract, mass media has picked up on this duty to mitigate process, which I'll explain. But this is the first contract, I think, for a few reasons, where this is going to become a big part of the conversation. And it probably already has, because this is not an official firing as of yet, as of Tuesday morning, which means that there's probably some back and forth happening between these two parties, meaning they don't want to get to a point where they have to litigate down the line because Brian Kelly doesn't have a legitimate job in football in 6 to 10 months. And he is just kind of sitting on his buyout plan, not unlike Jimbo Fisher, who, by the way, did not have a clause in his contract when he received his $77 million buyout from Texas A&M. And he is sitting on that and living his best life. And God bless him, because my goodness, that's a nice way to go out. All right. Terrible situation on the field, but you get 77 million and no clause that says you have to do X, Y, and Z to earn that 77 million. There are way worse ways to live your 50s, 60s, and 70s. Let's put it that way. What does this do to mitigate? Basically, if you follow us from the NFL track, it's offset language, but there's more to it. Okay. So the duty part of this is, yes, there's offset language, but we plan on offsetting. We plan on not having to pay this full $53 million for Brian Kelly over the course of the next, I believe it's 6 full seasons. I believe his contract ran through 2031. So that would be 6, maybe 7 years. Well, over the course of the next 6 to 7 years, this duty to mitigate says he has to actively be searching for a job within the football landscape, a football related employment. It can be college, it can be pro. And it can be coaching, an administrative role. It can be in the media. He can be sitting on the Fox or ESPN studios or at game day or at kickoff or doing, the Urban Meyer, Nick Saban role. That will qualify. And then once he has that role, he obviously has to notify LSU, this is what I'm doing, this is how much I'm earning, because then that will offset whatever payments they'll be needing to make over the course of the next 6 to 7 seasons. It's sticky, it's messy, right? There's a lot of back and forth, there's a faith, there's an honor to it. There's going to be situations where individuals, agents, parties try to sort of find the loopholes in this. And that's why my assumption is that LSU is looking for a smaller but lump sum upfront way to buy this thing out. And in that regard, we can call that payment a true buyout, right? Which is some sort of renegotiation compromise between two parties that says you're no longer going to work for us, but per the terms of your agreement, our original contract, we're not going to follow that by the letter of the law either. We're going to change the course, change the rules a little bit. Here's $25 million. Okay. It's a half buyout, but you get it today, right now, no questions asked. We've come up with the cash. Take this, and there's no more strings attached from either party. Go with God, and we'll do the same. I think we'll get to that point, but there will be schools, there will be organizations with much smaller situations that will follow through on this. We've got a biweekly payment or a monthly payment for termination fees. And if if previous coach doesn't mitigate, doesn't go through the unemployment process and actually go through the steps of trying to find a job within reasonable timeframes, we'll see lawyers involved. We'll see universities go after these people, these agencies, to attempt to at least further that process or stop payment, stop the termination fees. It's just messy, And by the way, this is corporate America in a nutshell. There's plenty of NDAs and situations like that have gone through this process, some for millions of dollars. Has it gotten up to the 77 million of Jimbo Fisher or the 53 million of Brian Kelly or the 50 million of James Franklin, which are the top 3 buyouts that we have on record here? Probably not, but this is where we are in college sports. Okay. We're at a point now where this is what these colleges are being guaranteed in their contracts. And most of these guys are getting 3 to 4 year windows. And if it isn't looking great, like it hasn't been for LSU, the cost of doing business is to have to deal with these 53 million in some way, shape, or form. So we'll see if there's some kind of resolution over the next 24 hours. But the only point I want to make on this is, well, 2, to cap off this offset language, this duty to mitigate. The expectation is that these universities don't plan on paying out that full amount. Okay. The expectation is this is still a great coach. It's not working here. He's going to go find a job at, college X. Maybe he slides into Tulane and Tulane coach slides into LSU, something like that. But our expectation is Brian Kelly will be making upwards of $5-6 million a year on a smaller landscape soon, maybe even in 2026. And then that will cut our payments in half. Okay. Because he's a $9.5 to $10 million per year player, or coach, per terms of his contract. We're hoping to cut our losses in half based on this offset language. So when we say Brian Kelly has a $53 million buyout right now, that's a loaded statement for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not really a buyout. They're paying that they have decided to pay him that money to not coach for him. So there's some sort of retained buyout, dead cash scenario happening, but that is money that is fully guaranteed per terms of his contract. That's salary. It's unpaid salary that will be paid. So the buyout portion of it is a little bit loose. And then also, because of this offset language, because of the duty to mitigate, the 53 million is very loose, because nobody thinks that James Franklin or Brian Kelly are going to go down the Jimbo Fisher route, which is just never return to football. And we're not going to sit here and say that Jimbo Fisher isn't coming back at any point in time. But every other coach that has gone through this has taken another job, with the small exceptions of a few. Brian Kelly is 64, I think, 63. There's another job in his future. So the expectation that LSU has bought him out is loose, and the expectation that that buyout cost is $53 million is very loose. At the end of the day, 25 to 30 is probably the number, around half. And like I said, I think within the next 48 hours, we're going to find out that that exact amount is going to be handed to him. No strings attached. We're done with this conversation. No more mitigation process, no more NDA, none of that. Just a flat out lump sum payment to make this all go away. With that said, I had Nicole Auerbach from NBC Sports on to talk a lot about the landscape of this stuff, including the coaching part of it, because James Franklin was top of mind. There was a lot to discuss there. My question was pretty simple, and I think it's a question a lot of us has had, which is, why are coaches being guaranteed this much money? When is the breaking point? How unsustainable is this? And I do think this answers a good portion of that question, which is Curt Cignetti gets, 10 for 90 to remain at Indiana and sort of squash all the rumors that he's leaving for Penn State or LSU or any of these jobs. Can we reference that more as 5 for 45, 4 for 40 and change? Do you think that's a better way to start looking at these? The contract is not that. Okay. If we go and read the contract, and these are public facing documents, by the way, you can go and grab a PDF and try to get to the legalese yourself if you want to. But the contract will say that he is guaranteed the $90 million. But having gone through the conversation we've just had here, Curt Cignetti, a 20-year now rise through the ranks to prove that he belongs as a college coach at some form. And if it doesn't work out for Indiana, if Indiana's fall for grace after this 2 or 3 year stint here, makes him expendable and makes Indiana boosters and Big Ten people sort of swirl a little bit. Let's say he gets through 4 years of this brand new contract, which is in and of itself an achievement. That leaves 6 seasons fully guaranteed on the books with the duty to mitigate, with an offset language clause. Can he go and find a job for $5 to $6 million? Absolutely. That's just where we are. So a coach like that who falls out of good graces with a non top tier school has a chance to flame out in Indiana and go grab a job in Florida, which could actually pay him close to that $10 million a year, $9 million a year. So I think it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors when you actually start to think about the whole process. We get caught up with 10 years fully guaranteed $90 million, or in Brian Kelly's case, 8 years fully guaranteed at $10.3 million per year. All true, all actually on the books, 100% per the legal documentation, true. But there's an expectation that when we relieve him of his duties, he has to go start looking for that next job. And the expectation is that next job will be 60 to 75% compensated based on what we've been doing with him or what we have left from a guaranteed perspective. So $53 million for Brian Kelly is factual based on the document, but it is, I think, pretty far from where the end game is going to land with that number when it's all said and done, whether that's upfront or whether they roll it out for the next 7 years and actually go through the process of offsetting it based on whatever his next job and his next salary is. So take it with a grain of salt. You're still going to see, myself included, you're going to see entities float out what that first balloon number is. What is the remaining contract? And I'm going to try to use syntax like that. Brian Kelly has $53 million fully guaranteed remaining on this contract. Offset language is available. Duty to mitigate is built into this process, which means, for now, LSU owes him upwards of $9.5 million per year for the next 6 years. We'll see how much that is offset by his next job, which he is required to start looking for within due time here. So it's a mouthful. It's a lot easier just to throw the $53 million number out there and say, God bless. But he will be earning that in some capacity, but it'll be split between his LSU retained money and his next job smashed together to pay these coaches an ungodly amount of money and go with God. That's a hell of a gig that they've been able to ascertain now with the rise of professional college sports over the past at least 2 seasons, but we know plenty more than that. Let's talk some baseball quickly, and then we'll flip the switch to the NBA in a bit and talk with Keith. Our MLB previews, all 30, are now live and in person on Spotrac.com. This was all me. So anybody who has questions, thoughts, suggestions, recommendations, come at me. Bring them to me. I'm thrilled to make these better, or to add more, or add names, or bring in some conversations about some of the market values. Here's how they were structured this year. I try to get as much in here without killing myself having to do 30. But here's the breakdown. Here's the outline. Every time you walk into a team, and by the way, you can go to your team pages on Spotrac. So the Yankees tax table for 2026, you'll see a big advertisement for the offseason preview article. I'll give some quick thoughts about the season that was 2025, a bright spot or two, some things that we're concerned about with this roster going forward, and then we get into the nuts and bolts. All the pending free agents listed out with their market value on Spotrac. So the annual average valuation for each of these free agents for each team, broken down by team. Then we talk about the option decisions coming up. And by the way, as soon as the World Series ends, it's like a 3 to 5 day window for all of these options to have to come to fruition, exercise or decline. So within that specific team, what kind of options exist? What are the option values? What are the buyout values for those options? And then some thoughts from me. Then we get into the arbitration process. We have full arbitration estimates for every player that is currently eligible for arbitration, plus players that may have an option. And if that option is declined, they would revert back to arbitration. Those players have an estimate. Within these team previews, you see every single player who is arbitration eligible, plus their estimate per Spotrac numbers for the 2026 season. So, like I said, this is a full gamut breakdown of this specific team that you're reading if you've opened up one of these articles. Then I get into the guaranteed contracts on the books. So if we're looking at Yankees, it's Aaron Judge, Garrett Cole, Max Fried, those players, and what their tax salary for the upcoming season will be, and some thoughts. And then just a quick paragraph at the bottom that breaks down their 2026 tax payroll projections per Spotrac. So because we're estimating arbitration salaries, we've done some estimated decisions on options that we think are going to come one way or the other in the next week or so. The guaranteed salaries, all the benefits and the minor league stuff that we build in based on estimates, and then just a flat estimate for any pre-arb player. I believe the minimum salary this year is $780,000 or $800,000. I did not look at that quickly. Whatever. We are estimating an $820,000 pre-arbitration estimate for any player with less than 3 years of experience, but on a 40-man roster right now. So the numbers that you see per our opening day tax projection payroll for a team is based on all of that. So the only thing that doesn't exist within those projected payrolls are a club option or a mutual option that we don't think will be exercised. So they've been left off. And then obviously any moves that are still yet to be made. We're not projecting free agent signings or trades, things like that. That's for you can do that using our trade tool or just kind of spreadsheeting yourself a little bit here. Obviously, when those things happen, our projections will update in real time. But for now, it's all of the 40-man players that currently are active, estimated arbitration, a flat estimate for pre-arbitration players, option decisions that are coming soon, and then the guaranteed salaries. That makes up what we have considered to be an actual opening day projection for your team, which then gives you the ability to see in more plain sight just how much tax base a particular team might have. And in certain cases, like the Yankees and the Mets and the Dodgers, it's negative tax base, right? In that regard. So we've done a lot of work on this. I'm really proud of it. We want to make it as best as possible. So if there are names, elements, items that you think we should be adding to these pieces, or you just have questions, give us a holler and we'll see if we can get these updated as quickly as possible. But all 30 MLB offseason previews are now live. You can find those on our news channel and or at the team views built into our MLB views on Spotrac right now. Let's talk some basketball with Keith Smith. All right, good to have Keith Smith back in the hopper here. Keith, I gave you 2 homework assignments. I know you're going to nail these. Let's start with the NBA Next candidates. Basically, 5 players that we all as a collective group should be watching for financial reasons over the course of the next, 3 to 4 months, maybe even longer, and what it means down the road for them and their respective teams.
Yeah, so I was never that student as a kid who like did a whole lot of extra, but now in life I do extra. Maybe I'm making up. So I tweaked the prompt a little bit.
Nice.
I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
It's still 5, but I did like 5 groups of guys. Because they're it just came together as like these 2 guys, some situations are very similar. So I'll give you my first group. I'm calling them the unextendables. So that's Austin Reeves and Kobe White. Their contracts are too small, even with the improved extension rules of 140% of the prior salary. It's just not enough for those 2 guys. That's only going to get them up into like the 20 million range. And these guys are going to be $30+ million players. If Austin Reeves keeps going the way he's going, he's going to be a near max guy. So they're group 1. Those two guards together, 2 similar guards, 2 guys who can both play on the ball, off the ball. They're both have grown over the years into a bigger role. And their teams are just in a little bit of a tough spot because this is why and I say this, hold me accountable when I tweet out later on in the offseason, what a great contract this is for this team. Yeah, for now, until the player outplays it, then you can't extend it. And that's where it gets tough.
What does it mean? Does it mean that he has to get past that July 1st threshold and then he becomes essentially open and now everybody's in the same ballpark, including the Lakers?
Yeah, so both Reeves and White are going to be in this exact same boat where they're going to have to go into free agency, and they're going to both be unrestricted free agents. The Lakers last time around were able to have a little bit of an advantage where they were able to, because Austin Reeves was a restricted free agent, they could control the process, for lack of a better term. And there were teams that were interested in Austin Reeves last time around and just didn't even make a play because it was a situation where they were very much sorry, I've got the dog driving me crazy this morning. He's fired up. They just didn't want to tie up money in restricted free agency because that becomes a whole process. So in this case, what happens with a guy like Reeves is now he's an unrestricted free agent. If a team wants to go, the Lakers are going to have to match, but they don't have the true match rights. They're just going to have to say, want to go. So you're probably not getting them on any kind of really team friendly thing. A little bit different with Kobe White. He's still an unrestricted free agent. His free agency it was a little more just go with the Bulls because he hadn't fully proven himself yet. Now he's there. So these are going to be 2 of the better free agents as well, because this is not a blockbuster free agent class. We'll just put it that way.
Any of these guys trade candidates because of this entire implication?
Yep. Reeves is an interesting one. Probably not. There are some who believe there's just too much overlap between him and Luka Doncic, and that is, that they would be best off to try to trade him to really rebalance the roster a little bit. But that's not something that they have ever really shown a desire to do. They are really in a spot where I think you're going to see them hang on to him. White becomes a little bit of a different story. If there's any sense for the Bulls that they're not going to be able to retain him in free agency, then they're probably going to have to consider moving him. But Chicago's always been a little weird with that stuff. They've watched guys walk away in the past versus making a proactive move to try to trade them.
All right. What's your next tier grouping here?
All right. So this one I was a little more true to it because it is a group of 1, but it's Trae Young. Did not get an extension done before the deadline at the start of the season, but he's in a little bit of a different spot because he has that player option. He's still technically extension eligible all the way through June 30th. So Young could decline that player option and come to a new deal with the Hawks, but there seems to be both on the Hawks side and somewhat on Young's side of, let's see how this season goes. Let's see what we look like. The Hawks have already committed big money to both Jalen Johnson and Dyson Daniels in extensions, but neither one got a max, so that leaves a little bit of room. They went out and got Kristaps Porzingis and Nickeil Alexander-Walker in free agency or in the offseason. So those guys are going to be part of it. Porzingis would need re-signed as well. So we end up in a spot where, all right, where do we want to go with Trae Young? And there are some who say he's no longer a no-brainer max guy, like where you just hand him the max and you move on, like what we saw happen with Luka Doncic. So now we're in a spot where there's any hesitancy, Young is kind of playing for his next deal, whether it's with the Hawks or it's with one of these teams. There's going to be 6 to 10 teams with cap space this coming off season. Then if those teams come up with big money, they may be like, all right, Trae Young's the guy who could put us over the top. And that's where if the Hawks aren't willing to go to the max, that could make it a little tricky. So he is playing for his next deal this year, whether that be with Atlanta or somewhere else.
Is there a world, I know timing's such a big part of the NBA offseason. Is there a world where the Hawks season goes very well and it's looked pretty good out of the gate here? I kind of like the new cast of characters. Things go well. This relationship is definitely going to continue. He opts out and is essentially a free agent, right? Mm-hmm. Do the Hawks then garner themselves a decent chunk of cap space that then they can start to use to bring in new blood? And then after the fact, because Trae Young has rights, he can be slapped on top of this thing and they can go over the thresholds?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, because with his cap hold, in order to re-sign him at a big enough number that it makes sense, like you're not getting Trae Young back at $5 to $10 million. That we're nowhere near there, that territory. So I think what ends up happening in that situation is if you're going to retain Trae Young, if you're going to retain Kristaps Porzingis, you're going to do that via staying over the cap and retaining their free agent rights. So that's where it becomes a little bit different. So I think that's where it's a little weird where like Reeves, to go back to him with the Lakers, he's going to have a small enough cap hold that if LeBron James either retires or moves on to another team, the Lakers could really clear the deck of a lot of salary obligations and just leave themselves with Luka and a couple other guys under contract. Reeves, relatively small cap hold, and then could be a player in free agency. The Hawks, unfortunately, they're not in that same boat. So it's really going to be if they have cap space, it's because Trae Young walked away or Kristaps Porzingis, or Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis walked away.
Okay, sounds good. Let's move on.
All right, so the next group, I'm going to call these the restricted free agents. So these are the guys who did not reach an extension agreement on their rookie scale contracts. And it's a big group, but the main names to know are Jalen Duren, Walker Kessler, Tari Eason. Those are the kind of forwards and centers in this group. And then you've got a couple guards in Benedict Mathurin and Jaden Ivey. So none of those 5 players reached a rookie scale extension. They're all, again, they're playing for their next deal now. We saw how restricted free agency went for players this summer. Cam Thomas, Quentin Grimes, Josh Giddey, Jonathan Kuminga all lingered all the way up to the start of training camp, basically, before they got deals. And only Giddey signed a long-term deal where he's got guaranteed money. Everybody else is Thomas and Grimes ultimately signed the qualifying offers. And then Kuminga came to this kind of complicated team option deal where he's got an option year for the next season. So it can be risky on these guys. Some of them are good enough where, again, there's enough teams with cap space, and there's teams with cap space that haven't found their young center as their permanent starter moving forward. That's where guys like Duren and Kessler could have big offers coming their way. Then Mathurin, he's in for a big year. No Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana. He's unfortunately he's dealing with a foot injury right now himself. Mathurin is, but he'll be back, and this is a big year for him to prove, hey, I can be more than just a guy who can score 15, 20 points a night off the bench. Like I can maintain efficiency as a starter with a bigger role. Eason's been kind of a fun role player for a number of years. It looked like when the Rockets got things done with Kevin Durant for less than the max, some of that would go to Eason in an extension. That did not play out that way. So that says there's some divide there between his valuation and the teams. And then Jaden Ivey, we're hoping it would come back healthy and ready to go, and he's not on the floor yet. So he's in a little bit of an odd spot. Restricted free agency, again, can be really tough on players.
Is there any of these names surprising to you? I know you did a prediction piece back in June, and you've kind of followed through on many of these opportunities over the course of the last few months. Any of these names just dead out surprised they didn't get done?
Duren,
Yeah.
especially with Jalen Duren, because the Pistons have grown into being a good team. He is a very good player. They don't have they have nice other players at that position, but they do not have like really good players behind him. That it's not like they've got the next guy to just step in and take his place if he were to go. And this is one where I think what Detroit's thinking is, hey, he's going to have a relatively low cap hold. Let's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of use that as an idea of that just gives us flexibility. We've always got restricted free agency as the crutch, where if somebody does parachute in with this big offer, we can just match it and move forward that way. Walker Kessler was a little bit of a surprise, but again, it's super small cap hold. The Jazz are going to have a ton of cap space this summer. I think their idea is, hey, if we're going to keep him as part of it. I would also keep an eye on him as a trade candidate because we've seen with Danny Ainge and now Austin Ainge really running the show. If they're ready to move on from a guy, they just do it without a lot of concern for the backlash and the heat that they may take on that. They'll just go if they think that's the right move to make.
Do you think, I mean, especially in this multiple apron world that we live in here, do you think that teams just aren't afraid of restricted free agency? I mean, it's been such a lightly used crutch in this league and really in all the leagues. I mean, hockey, it's fallen off a cliff. It doesn't exist in football anymore, really. But do you think it's just not a fear based on what you said? We don't really expect offers to come because general managers don't generally operate that way. And if they do, they're going to be within the mindset, within the timeline that we're prepared to match anyway. So let's just essentially delay the inevitable and then deal with it whenever we have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what has happened here. And there are strategic reasons, like I laid out, why you would want to delay on that. But there are also, I think, these situations with these teams where, like I could tell you, the players association, the players agents, they feel like it's almost a form of collusion where it's
No.
like everybody has been like, forget it, we're just not going to play, right? Like we're not going to bother. The team side will tell you, well, in order to get a restricted free agent, you have to make the offer when free agency opens, but then everything holds for those 4, 5, 6 days during the moratorium. Then you can actually give the guy the offer sheet. Then it's another whole day that you're waiting. So you're now a week into free agency before you have an answer, and everything else may have moved already. You can't ask a bunch of other guys to say, hey, we're going to do this if this falls through, because those guys,
Right.
whatever their own backup plans, those may not be there for them. So that becomes a challenge with that part of it. And I think it just is a matter of teams are like, especially in the last few years, no one's really had cap space to play around in their restricted free agent market. Because if you're going to do that, you got to do it by cap space, and you have to overpay to get a guy. That way, you have to I like to say you put all the bells and whistles in the deal, which is player option and trade bonus and upfront payments and all the things you can to make it as least attractive to match for the incumbent team. And then the last thing I'll say is I think there's also this belief of, hey, let's just, if you want the guy, let's just work out a sign and trade then. Let's just be good partners and not fool around with this, which ties us both up. Let's just get something moving in a different direction. So yeah, restricted free agency though, this year I think should have been a flashing red light warning alarm of be careful because this is what could happen to you.
Okay. Fair enough. What's next?
All right. The injury prone big men, Kristaps Porzingis and Mitchell Robinson. Two really good players, different players, both good rim protectors. Robinson's obviously one of the elite. The new term is vertical spacer, just lob catcher around the rim. And then you have Porzingis, who is obviously one of the better shooting bigs in the entire league. He can space out to 35 feet without much worry. But the issue with both these guys is they're constantly hurt and off the floor. Porzingis now has come out and talked about he has a condition that basically makes it really hard on him sometimes to do things. It seems like they've got it under control as far as it just fatigues him and puts him in a weird spot. And then Robinson, we don't really know what's going on, but they keep calling it injury ramp up, but we still haven't seen him yet. So that's a little bit of a concern here with him as well. So two really good players, two guys that are the Knicks are right there. They're a title contender now. Porzingis is on the Hawks, who are up and coming and trying to be good. And both of these guys, I'm sure, for their own clarity and their own peace of mind, would love to get an extension done. But their teams are looking at and saying, all right, how much can we lock in? Hawks, we already mentioned Trae Young. They've already got other money locked up. The Knicks very famously have a lot of money locked up in guys. And I think both of they have an extension looming with Karl-Anthony Towns next summer as well. I think these teams are looking at it and saying, yeah, I just don't know that we can, go too far with these guys, knowing if we get 50, 55 games out of them, that feels pretty good knowing where we want to go. So these are going to be spots to watch all the way through the rest of the season.
I think injury ramp up is the new load management.
Yeah, it feels like it. It's just weird to load manage a guy like the first 4 games of the season. Like that is, if it was like, we're going to hold them out of the next game. And I think teams have looked at it and just said, hey, back-to-backs for some guys, they're just not going to be a thing. Anymore. Done. We're done with that. These guys are going to sit out, and it's going to be what it is.
Well, I have a feeling that trend might continue until the league changes the scheduling process.
Yeah, so. And I mean, this is a whole other side, and we can have this conversation later. But scheduling, I think, is going to be a point of contention in the next CBA. I think a lot of the money things have been worked out. I think now we're going to get into some of the detail stuff on how do we get there. And I think, unfortunately, I think we all know the real answer is you play less games.
Yep.
But nobody's going to opt for that because that's less money for everybody.
They might. We might get to that point.
We'll see.
Yeah, we might get to that point. If careers start to shorten, like they might, you know what I mean? We're kind of still bamboozled by the LeBrons and the Durants who have gone 20 plus years, but this is not normal, right? We're going to see these careers. We're seeing it in the NFL quite a bit. So I think it'll get to that point eventually.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, I got one more group for you. These are the guys who bet on themselves. I referenced them.
Whoa! That's the wrong terminology right now.
Sorry, yes, these guys believe in themselves. Let's put it that way. Cam Thomas and Quentin Grimes. So both took their qualifying offers. Neither one felt like the offers they were being given were anywhere near what they should have been getting as free agents. So they both basically said, all right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to prove it this year. Next year, I'll be a unrestricted free agent, and I will have a chance to sign with whoever I want. And these two guys really are playing for their next deal in a major way, simply because there is nothing locked in for them beyond this season for both of these guys. Two similar type guys where it's some belief around the league is your very best role will be as a high-end bench guard, which is not some take in it like that as an insult, but I always remind people Jamal Crawford and Lou Williams played for 2 decades. It made a ton of money and had great careers.
And you're always on a good team. All the good teams want you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fantastic role where I think in some ways takes advantage of your skills in the best way. So going to be interesting to watch. With everything we discussed about restricted free agency, how is that going to play out with these guys? So I'm very curious to see Thomas and Grimes. We'll say believe in themselves. How that goes moving forward.
All right. This was exactly as we expected, Keith. Great work. Let's finish quickly with this new look San Antonio Spurs being look, 80% of this is Wemby. We know that. And we knew he was going to get to this point soon. I'm not sure we were ready for it in year 3, but we're here. And, it's going to be a lot of onion layers to take away here because he's going to be extension eligible, which doesn't mean much. He's just going to sign the max.
Yeah.
And that'll come into effect in 2 years.
With the designated player language and everything else. Yeah.
Bingo. So that's already on the books essentially in pencil right now. But it's this rest of this process, right? Clearly some of the offseason moves have worked. The draft picks appear to be maturing properly and maybe even ahead of schedule. So that this is the $1 million question to you, I think, right now, which is A, is this team sustainable in 2025-26? B, can they get better at the trade deadline? Do they have assets they can move out to bring back assets? Or do you think this looks a little bit more like the Magic and a couple of these teams that just let this year burn out and just the team went through it? They got into the postseason. They got postseason experience as 24, 25-year-olds, which is really, really important. The Celtics did this early in the early years of Tatum and Brown too. Should they try to add on right now, Keith, or do you think this is just a running out to the finish line situation and then make this summer essentially extremely aggressively fun?
Yeah, the good thing for the Spurs is with Wemby, you have ridiculous runway. You believe this guy is going to be everything. And I am trying not to overreact to it. I was one of the people after his opening night ridiculous performance that the NBA retweeted where I said, I just don't even know how to process him anymore. Like, it doesn't make sense what we're watching. And he's only done 15 more things since then.
Yeah. 140 points in 3 games. I mean, this is insane.
He leads the league in me rewinding to say, what was that? Like, I don't even know what just happened. He's incredible. So if you're the Spurs, I don't want to say there's no right or wrong answer here because you do have that runway, but I'm also very fond of saying sometimes you try to take advantage of that, then you just never get there. And if you wait too long, you're not going to get there. If you go too early, make too many moves, maybe you don't get there because you went too early. So they're in a little bit of, it sounds weird to say this because they're playing great with this guy who looks like he's going to be the MVP of the league for a number of years running, but they're in a bit of a challenging spot. I think if you could pour truth serum into the Spurs, if they knew they were going to get the number 2 overall pick and Dylan Harper, they probably don't make the De'Aaron Fox trade.
Right.
But they made that trade knowing they were going to extend Fox. So they did it. They took care of it. That's a spot to watch. All of a sudden, Fox becomes a really interesting trade candidate for if another team comes up really needing a point guard, the Spurs could take care of him by sending him to a good team. And then Fox, or then they return what they need by using his salary as the salary matching in that. So we'll see.
Could that happen as early as February, Keith?
I mean, it could. I don't think it will. I think this year, I'm not going to be surprised if they make a move or two. I think they may be the moves where it is like, boy, that was a good. They went and got this guy who is, he's got a couple years left on his contract. He's just a really solid 4th, 5th starter, really solid role player. And now they have him and they'll be able to, throw him in with the rest of the group in that. Because if you look at the roster, they kind of have everything. They've got guard. They could use more shooting. Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing. But so like I look at a guy like if they could go trade for someone like Corey Kispert, who feels a little bit out of place on the Washington Wizards, where it's like he's not the old vet that they're trying to rebuild their value to trade like Middleton or McCollum. He's not one of the super young kids that they drafted over the last couple of years. He just kind of is like, why is he here? It's just the way it went for him with the way the team pivoted to a rebuild. He's the kind of guy who could make sense. You got a couple of years under the contract. You go get him. You put him on your team. He fits for the next, half decade or more, and you just move forward, and you're probably not paying that much to get him. That's the kind of move I think happens this year. But I think when we get into the summer, when it becomes, all right, we now have a season of Harper. We have a second season of Castle. We've seen Fox return. We've seen what it looks like trying to play all 3 of those guys. How did we get there? Then I think that's where the Spurs could say, all right, we pivot. I'll make a prediction. When we start next season, one of Stephon Castle or De'Aaron Fox won't be on the Spurs. They will have moved one of them to fill a hole elsewhere, with the idea being either Fox went as a good player in a big chunk of salary in a trade, or Castle went as selling the other team on here. You got a really good young lead guard who can go. It's simply because they kind of stumbled into Dylan Harper with lottery luck when they weren't necessarily expecting. I think Dylan Harper is really, really good. And I think in some ways is the better long-term running mate for Victor Wembanyama. Because I think he's just a better playmaker than Castle is. And he can do more offensively. And defensively, when you have Wembanyama, you don't necessarily need other great defenders on the floor because he can do so much to clean up himself. So they're in a weird spot, but man, what a good weird spot to be in.
I'll get you out of here on this question. You've kind of alluded to a couple of the terminology, the running mate, the other star, the other piece. Fox is fringe All NBA. He's a big time player, and I think in a different situation, we're noticing him a hell of a lot more. But do you think now, having seen Wemby for 2+ seasons now, and certainly what he's done to start this season, do you think that he needs another superstar in this roster? A true and tried veteran,
Sure.
all NBA type player, because that's obviously what we've all been trying to do for the past 2 years, is to find, should Luka be there? Should Giannis be there? Should we be putting two of these people together? Or do you think that Victor stands out as this player that can just kind of Giannis in Milwaukee, just take everybody else, take C's and make them B's and make B's A minuses and go from there?
The only reason why I say yes is still a little shaky if Wembanyama misses time.
Yeah.
What happens, right? That's where if you could feel confident he's going to play 70 games a season. And I'm at the point where, I mean, the NBA kind of said it with their 65 game marker.
Yeah.
I say 70 means you played a full season, right? Like because everybody's going to miss a handful of games here and there. So I think for him, if you felt we could get him 70 games a year, get us to the playoffs healthy, you could build a roster with a bunch of 2s and 3s, not 2s and 3s positionally, but like number 2 options, number 3 options, have a really good deep roster around Wembanyama and go. But the problem is if he goes down, now you have a team that is a bunch of 2s and 3s, and that becomes, well, we're good, but we're not that good. And then what happens? So that's the only reason why I say you're pretty young in his career. You have the benefit of he's on, I mean, rookie scale contracts. It's like NFL rookie QB contracts. They're just the best values you have going in sports, because it's, if they outplay it, you're sitting there on surplus value for years to come. Well, we've with the way it works in the NBA, we've got this year, next year. That's it. Then the surplus value is gone because he's going to be on a max. Good chance if he stays healthy, he's going to be on the 30% max because he's going to jump right into that second tier max. But that's still pretty good. You still have a little bit more wiggle room because then you've got Dylan Harper. And that's where, if I'm the Spurs, I'm looking at it and saying, hey, we've got De'Aaron Fox today, who, like you said, really good player, all-star level guy, borderline all-NBA guy. Harper may get there. He may be that guy. And I think their internal belief is, hey, don't run on Castle. He was the rookie of the year. He's really good too. And I think for them, it's just a little unfortunate that they all play the same position. And that's where it becomes, all right, how are you going to play two? You can play 2 of them. Playing all 3 of them gets a little tough. You're not going to have enough shooting and those kind of things. But these are the things they're going to be figuring out over the course of the rest of this season and in the next summer is, how do we put all this together around Wembanyama? Because I think the Spurs know they did it before with Tim Duncan. Hey, we have something really special here. We don't need to wait. Now, that was a little different because David Robinson was already there.
Right.
They had that kind of infrastructure in place. But I think if you're the Spurs, you're looking at it as, hey, we got take 2 of this, where Tim Duncan made us, auto title contenders for almost 2 decades. So we're now in a spot where we've got this guy again. Why are we going to waste 3 years of it just because he's young? Like, we don't need to. Let's get it done. He's that good already. And I promise I'm not overreacting or being hyperbolic. Like, he is that good already. Like, he's incredible.
We're exactly 1 week into the season as of today, Tuesday. Is this a 50-win team, Keith?
Yeah, I think so. I was way too low on him.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I thought that they were going to be, I thought it was going to take the natural progression of, they weren't very good last year. When Wembanyama got hurt, he's back. They battle, they fight. Maybe a play-in tournament team. Maybe they squeak into the first round of the playoffs. Now they might be more fighting for home court advantage, because it's just, especially divisions don't matter as much in the NBA. But they do matter some, because you do still play your division teams more than you play anybody else. The Rockets are a little weaker than we thought. The Pelicans look terrible. Dallas doesn't look like they're going to be very good. And Memphis is just kind of, they're good, but not that great. Spurs might be able to stack some extra wins in the division that I necessarily wasn't counting on. And now all of a sudden, that could take them from being a 44-win team to being a 48, 49, 50-win team. And in the West, that's going to be so compact behind Oklahoma City and Denver, who I think will separate eventually. That could put you in range of being a home court advantage team.
Wow. And a lot of it is Harper. I mean, it's just out of the gate, you can see that there's the light bulb is on, and so many of these IQ plays, and certainly the physicality too. So I'm with you.
Can I give you one more quick aside because it's related to Harper?
Yeah.
I think teams, and let me rephrase, I don't think I know. Teams are now starting to look deeper into former players' kids. And what does that mean, especially if they're kids who have been around the game since the time they were like 6 or 7 and they were in the gym with dad, training with dad. This is not I'm not making a cheap Bronny James joke or anything, but we could see a lot of these
Well, now you are.
guys. Now I am, now that I mentioned it. But like a lot of these guys, Dylan Harper, you can just see he's been playing against NBA guys, since he was a child.
Yeah.
And you can just see none of this phases him. He just stepped on the court ready to go. He just feels good. And I'm just ready. That's something that I know talking with some teams where they're like, yeah, it's just another part of the evaluation process where it is, hey, he's already had experience from the time he was 12 playing against dad and his buddies in the gym and just has a sense of, what it means. Because when you watch Harper, the way he moves, the poise he plays with, the way he just finds his spots on the floor, that's stuff where you could tell, all right, he's played against NBA speed, size, and length for a very long time for a guy who's only a year into his NBA career. It's just that's going to be something that's going to be another evaluation point moving forward. And we've got a couple more of those guys coming up in this next draft class, including the Boozer twins, who are at Duke and look pretty good.
It's great stuff, man. We'll keep with it. I know you're going to be busy heading into that trade deadline and flipping the switch to next season, which happens way too early. But I'm feeling your pain with Major League Baseball right now. I can tell you. By the way, Vlad Jr., one of those guys right there who kind of walked into this league having been in dugouts his whole life as a kid, and he looks pretty comfortable, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's something special, man. He is. I said it when they knocked out my Yankees. He's absolutely as terrifying when he's that bad as his dad is. Because
Crazy.
It's just I don't know if he's going to hit many like pitches that bounce 3 feet in front of the plate and put him out of the park like his dad did, but he's still just as terrifying when he's up there. He's something special.
And he's way more rich.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. My thanks to Keith. My thanks to all of the Spotrac people for their great work this week. We've been cranking out plenty of new views, plenty of new articles, all those live on Spotrac.com. Visit BettorEdge.com as well. Use code Spotrac at registration for $20 on the house. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Ginnitti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spotrac Podcast.